Hi everyone, and welcome to the Deck Wizard channel. Today, I'll be guiding you all step by step on how to dual boot your Steam Deck with SteamOS and Windows 11, both being accessible with a stunning boot screen that you can customize easily. From all of your feedback over the past few months, I have been testing and working towards an entirely new method, script, and user interface for dual, triple, and quad booting the Steam Deck. This method has been made as efficient as possible for you to get multiple operating systems on your Steam Deck. To get started, all we require is preferably 2 blank USB memory sticks that are minimum 8GB in size, one for the SteamOS recovery image and one for Windows. A USB-C adapter so we can plug our USB sticks into the Steam Deck, access to a Windows PC or laptop, and our Steam Deck with a recommended internal drive size of 128GB or more. Make sure to download everything you need for this tutorial from the download section in the description onto your Windows PC or laptop, transferring the extracted Steam Deck drivers to your Windows installation USB so they are easy to retrieve later. On your computer, load Rufus and plug in your first USB. Navigate to the SteamOS recovery image and drag this onto Rufus. Press start and wait for this to finish. This usually takes around 5 to 10 minutes to complete. Next, plug in your second USB and download the Windows 11 disk image from Microsoft's website. This is linked in the description. We want to select Windows 11 from the drop-down, choose our language and confirm, followed by 64-bit download. Once this is downloaded, drag this file onto Rufus, as we did before with our SteamOS recovery image. Press start and wait for this to finish. Now we have both of our USBs ready to go. Let's come over to our Steam Deck and plug in our USB-C adapter along with our SteamOS recovery USB. If you already have SteamOS installed at this point and don't wish to re-image the Steam Deck, I would still recommend continuing to pay attention to the steps I am explaining in this method. I am including this chapter as a point of reference in case you ever need to perform this step in the future. For example, if you upgrade or change your internal drive due to requiring more storage or as a replacement. If you already have SteamOS installed, you will need to load up the recovery USB to access the KDE Partition Manager for when we shrink and split the home partition, which will be locked on SteamOS desktop mode due to the internal drive being mounted. Additionally, you will need the SteamOS recovery USB for when we disable EFI entries for operating systems that prevent our bootloader from loading first time. Once you have both USBs ready, come over to your Steam Deck and plug in your USB-C adapter and insert the first USB for the SteamOS recovery image. With the Steam Deck powered off, hold volume down and press power once to access the boot menu and choose our Steam Deck recovery image USB. This can take 5 minutes to load if you're doing this for the first time. To install SteamOS, simply select Re-image Steam Deck from the desktop. Wait for the console window to appear and press Proceed to confirm you want everything erased and for the partition table to be recreated. This process can take about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. Once finished, press Proceed and the Steam Deck will reboot into the initial setup for SteamOS. After installing SteamOS from fresh, you should load into selecting your language, time zone, and setting up your Wi-Fi, where you will be required to download updates. This can take up to 20 minutes to complete, depending on your internet connection. After the update's complete, your Steam Deck will restart and you will be prompted to log into your Steam account, and if required, your Steam Guard authentication. Once we are all logged in and ready, we can go ahead and switch to SteamOS desktop mode and begin getting our bootloader ready before we install Windows. On SteamOS desktop mode, go to System Settings, User Management, and set a password by choosing Change Password. For a quick install, you can use Pass or Deck. You may need to download and install Firefox, so we can search for the script's GitHub page. We can install Firefox from the Discover store. Once done, open Firefox and we want to type JLoBoot 10 into Google by using our Steam on-screen keyboard, which can be accessed by pressing the Steam button and X. Find the GitHub page for the Steam Deck Refine script and scroll down slightly to the installation. Now, open a console window via the application launcher and either enter or copy and paste the following: git clone https://github.com/jloboot10/ and this is capital S and D Steam Deck _ refined with capital EFI / and press enter. Once the files have finished being obtained, we need to type cd space Steam Deck with capital S and D _ refined with capital EFI and press enter. This will create a new line. And next we need to type chmod space +x space install hyphen capital GUI.sh and press enter to create another line. Lastly, we need to type /install hyphen capital GUI.sh and press enter. We will be prompted for our password and be required to press Y on our keyboard once to proceed. Once the installation is complete, we will be prompted as to whether we want a shortcut on the desktop. Press yes and access the shortcut icon called Refined GUI from the desktop. Inside the Refined GUI, we can see many options available to us. First is the background, which must be in PNG format and is recommended to be 1280 by 800 in size, although I have used backgrounds bigger than this and they have all resized appropriately when applied. Second is the default boot option. Whenever you fail to make a selection of your operating system, there will be a timeout in effect, which can be seen at the bottom of the GUI, and depending on your choice for the default boot, you will boot into your selection. So, for example, SteamOS is selected by default, and we can choose between SteamOS, Windows or Linux to boot first whenever no activity from the trackpad or directional buttons are detected. When Boot Last Booted OS is checked, This will boot the last operating system you accessed. So, for instance, if we last booted Windows 11, then we will boot Windows 11. If we fail to make a selection when we boot the Steam Deck, Use Firmware Bootenum is checked by default and will allow the SteamOS logo to be visible whenever booting into SteamOS. You won't need to worry about this selection and should keep it selected at all times. Boot options 1 through 4 offer assigning our order of operating systems that will appear whenever we turn on the Steam Deck. SteamOS and Windows are pre-selected by default. However, you can change these if you wish. You can choose your icons by selecting Browse and navigating to your selection. We will be learning more about boot options 3 and 4 much later in this tutorial. For now, all we will be focusing on is boot options 1 and 2. To install our bootloader for the first time, we need to select Install Refind, where we will be prompted to enter our password. So pressing the Steam button and X, you will be able to access the on-screen keyboard. Type your password and press OK. Wait for this to finish and start configuring your bootloader. Once you are happy, press Create Config once, and then Install Config. We are going to be prompted one last time to enter our password whenever we install a new config, and won't need to press the Install Refind button again. So, enter your password by pressing the Steam button and X, and you will receive a prompt that everything has been copied successfully to the ESP partition, where all of our EFI files are stored. Now, let's restart the Steam Deck and marvel for a moment at our new boot screen, which for now only boots SteamOS, but stick around and we will get Windows installed as quickly as we can. With SteamOS installed and the Steam Deck powered off, load your recovery USB by holding volume down and pressing power once to access the boot menu. Select your USB and wait for the recovery image to load. This can take up to 10 minutes to load if you are doing this for the first time, but will become faster on subsequent boots. On the recovery desktop, open the application launcher in the bottom left. Choose KDE Partition Manager. In here, we want to access our internal drive, which will be listed on the left-hand side. Once selected, we will see our partition table from SteamOS. Scrolling down the list, we will see ext4 Home. This is where SteamOS is installed and where we want to split the partition for our Windows installation. We want to right-click on this partition with L2 and select Resize Move. From here, you will see a box appear with a slider for resizing the home partition. By comparing size and free space after, we can slide this bar to a place that is best suited to what we want the total size of our operating system installations to be. For my own personal requirements on this Steam Deck, and as this Steam Deck has been replaced with a 128GB NVMe, I'm going to allocate around half of my 128 to Windows, which after all of the installation is complete, should give me enough room to install applications and some small games. Once you have decided on the size you want between both operating systems, choose OK, and underneath ext4 Home, an unknown partition has appeared in Placeholder. Right-click on this partition and select New. In this window, we want to select the file system drop-down and choose NTFS and choose OK. Now we must press Apply in the top left corner to perform the pending operations we have just queued. Once the tasks are completed, press OK and KDE Partition Manager will refresh the partition table. You can see we have our SteamOS image reduced to our own specifications and our new NTFS partition for Windows. Now we are ready to install Windows. Let's go ahead and shut down the Steam Deck. To install Windows on our newly created partition, plug your bootable USB into the USB-C adapter. With the Steam Deck powered off, we want to hold volume down and power to access the boot menu and choose our Windows USB. The Windows setup takes around a minute to load up, so in that time we want to rotate our deck portrait so we can perform the installation steps. Now we are ready, choose Install Windows and accept the license agreement. Choose I don't have a product key and that you just want to install Windows. Once you arrive at the partition list for where we install Windows, if we scroll to the bottom of this list, we will see our partition that we just created in the KDE Partition Manager. Because we chose NTFS and pre-formatted, we can simply go ahead and select this partition and press Next. Windows will now be installed, and for me, this process took 3 to 4 minutes to complete before the Windows setup restarted the Steam Deck and launched the final phase of the installation. Once your Steam Deck has restarted, you will be required to choose your region, keyboard layout, and enter your username. Perform these steps, and for the following prompts, I would recommend choosing No and turning any toggles off to reduce some of the features running on Windows 10 or 11, which may impact performance. Windows will finish up the installation, and at the end, we will eventually load into a portrait view of our desktop. Here, we immediately want to right-click on the desktop and choose Display Settings, scrolling down to Orientation and selecting Landscape, so we can have our Steam Deck the right way round. The next step now that Windows is installed on our Steam Deck is to install all of the drivers for Windows. You can download these directly from Valve's website, the latest AMD graphics, SD card, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi and sound drivers, which we will need to make sure these are all set up correctly. This link, along with everything else, is listed in the description. I would strongly suggest downloading all the zip drivers onto your Windows PC and extracting them there into individual folders before transferring to a new folder created on your Windows USB. This is to save time, as extracting these zip files on the Steam Deck can take much longer as opposed to your computer. Begin by accessing the folder called Aerith and double-clicking Setup. Wait for the installer to detect your GPU and press Install in the bottom right. Halfway through the setup, you will need to select Install again from a smaller box, and shortly after, we want to press Finish. Press back and access the BayHub folder to install our SD card driver. Choose Setup, Next, and wait for this to finish, and choose Restart Later. Go back and access the RT-LAN folder and double-click Setup.exe, and your Wi-Fi driver will be installed. Go back again and choose the Bluetooth folder called RT Blue. In here, simply double-click the install driver.cmd file and the driver will instantly be installed. For our sound to work in Windows, we need to navigate to the last two folders, which will enable our sound to work. These are called CS35141 and NAU88L21. Inside both of these folders will be two .inf files that you must right-click on and select Install for the sound to work. Now all of our drivers are installed, we need to perform one more task whilst still in Windows, and one more from the SteamOS recovery USB. Now all of our drivers are installed, we need to perform one more job in Windows and one final task with the SteamOS recovery USB. From the desktop, and with your on-screen keyboard already open, we need to right-click on Start and select Search. Type CMD and choose Run as Administrator. Here we need to type the following to ensure that whenever Windows boots, the screen is not fizzled. BCDEDIT space /set quotation mark curly brace global settings, all one word, a curly brace quotation mark space highest mode space on, and press enter. We will be told the operation has completed successfully, and from here we want to shut down the Steam Deck and plug in our SteamOS recovery USB for one last step to make sure our bootloader always boots first now that Windows has been installed. Hold volume down and press power to access your SteamOS recovery USB. Once loaded, access the console from your application launcher. Here we need to connect a keyboard so we can type the following command. Sudo EFI boot mgr, all one word, to display the list of operating system EFIs currently on our Steam Deck. Take note of the number for your Windows Boot Manager. To disable the Windows Boot Manager, we need to type sudo EFI boot manager space -b. The number of our Windows Boot Manager and -A and press enter. The list will now refresh and you will notice that in comparison to previously, we no longer have an asterisk next to the Windows Boot Manager. Once complete, we can shut down the Steam, remove our USB-C adapter and turn on the Steam Deck to show that our bootloader is working as it should. And you now have your Steam Deck dual booted with SteamOS and Windows 11. To change your background, make sure you have saved this somewhere as a PNG file and called background for best practice. Simply access the refined GUI from the SteamOS desktop, select Browse in Background and navigate to where you saved your file and press OK. Next, make sure all your other entries are as they should be. Set your timeout and press Create Config, followed by Install Config and typing in your password. We will be notified that our config was copied to the ESP partition, and we can now restart the Steam Deck to see our bootloader looking how we want it to. If your bootloader is for some reason no longer appearing upon boot, all we need to do is boot manually into SteamOS by holding volume up and pressing power once. Access boot from file, ESP, EFI, SteamOS, and Steamcl.EFI. Once SteamOS has loaded into gaming mode, simply restart the Steam Deck and all will be back as it once was. This is achieved by a systemd service within the script, which checks to make sure all EFI entries are intact. EFI, which stands for Extensible Firmware Interface, is a bootloader file which contains information relating to each operating system we have installed. For instance, we have Steamcl.EFI for SteamOS, boot mfgw.efi for Windows 10 or 11, and if you're using Ubuntu, will be shimx64.efi. All of these are contained within our ESP partition, which, if you're looking at your partition table from the KDE Partition Manager, would be Partition 1. You will need to disable the EFI entry via the SteamOS recovery USB by using the command sudo EFI boot manager -b -A. You can tell that an EFI entry is active by the asterisk symbol next to the entry. As a disclaimer, when Valve or Microsoft releases a major update, it may be the case that we need to disable these entries again. If this happens, I will create a follow-up video on how to achieve this as a refresher. We have discovered that the Steam Deck BIOS firmware is very aggressive in wanting Windows to boot first, so we must prevent this with the EFI boot manager if you are running Windows 11 and 10 from the Steam Deck. None of what you have seen in this video would be possible without the help of the original creator of the Steam Deck Refined script, JLoBu10. It has been a pleasure to have worked alongside JLoBu10 in the development of this script and getting to the point where it is ready to share with you all. We have both worked very hard in making this script as easy as possible for you all to dual, triple and quad boot your Steam Decks, and to be able to customize your backgrounds icons through the bespoke refined GUI that has been built from the ground up by JLoBu10 and tested extensively by myself. If you wish to create a modification of this script or a video, all we ask is to please make sure to credit JLoBu10 and DeckWizard, as we have both spent a lot of our own free time to make this possible. If you enjoyed this tutorial and would like to see more, subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter for more Steam Deck guides and gameplay of old and new games. These videos take a lot of time to create, whilst researching, testing multiple scenarios and providing in-depth instructions for you all to follow. You can support my work via my relaunched Ko-Fi and Patreon. By joining, you can access many different perks such as one-on-one support within a Patreon-only channel within my Discord server and early access to new videos. In this section of the video, we are going to look at the various ways we can triple boot on the Steam Deck alongside our SteamOS and Windows 11 dual boot, starting with booting Batocera and dedicated emulation platform from the MicroSD card. I won't be showing how to get your games onto this or any further configurations apart from getting the operating system to boot from your bootloader. Getting Batocera on your Steam Deck is quite a simple process. On your Windows PC or laptop, download the Batocera Steam Deck image from the link listed in the description and drag this onto Rufus with your blank MicroSD inserted and press Start. Wait for this to finish, and once complete, insert your new Batocera SD card into your Steam Deck. Go to SteamOS desktop mode and launch the refined GUI. Make sure to have Batocera inserted into your Steam Deck at this time and assign Batocera from the drop-down on your third choice, followed by choosing the relevant icon you wish to choose. Once done, all we need to do is click Create Config followed by Install Config, which again we will be required to enter our password and press OK. Once complete, we will be notified that everything was copied to the EFI partition successfully. Now our config is created and applied, we want to restart the Steam Deck and we will see that a third icon has appeared, which we can now select and boot into Batocera as long as the MicroSD is inserted into the Steam Deck. Download a Windows 11 or 10 ISO file and drag this onto Rufus. With your MicroSD card inserted, it is important to choose Windows to go from the drop-down and press Start, making sure to choose the options I have listed here. Wait for this to finish and boot into the refined GUI. Before you create the config for a Windows MicroSD or USB, you must always make sure that the SD and USB is inserted before you press Create Config. This is important because we need to collect the correct GUID of the external media in order to apply to our refined config. Otherwise, it won't recognise correctly and you will have to do it again. Once you have selected your icon and chosen Windows SD from the drop-down on your third choice, press Create Config followed by Install Config. Enter your password and press OK on the confirmation. Restarting your Steam Deck, we can see both windows are present on the bootloader for us to choose from. We need to boot into our SteamOS recovery USB and disable the Windows Boot Manager that has appeared via the sudo EFI Boot Manager -b-a command, where the 4 X's are your Windows Boot Manager entry. Once this is complete, simply restart the Steam Deck to see your bootloader once again. In this section of the video, we are going to look at how we can install an alternative Linux operating system and quad boot on the Steam Deck with SteamOS, Windows 11, Batocera. For this example, I will be using Ubuntu, which is a very familiar operating system across the Linux community. I believe that Fedora, Kubuntu, and GNOME also work if you prefer to use those. The installation steps are quite similar. As before, with preparing USBs, take your Ubuntu ISO file, drag onto Rufus, start, and wait to finish. Depending on whether you have decided to split your SteamOS or Windows partition, you will need to boot into the SteamOS recovery USB if you are shrinking the SteamOS partition, or you can boot normally into SteamOS desktop mode if you are shrinking your Windows drive. For this example, we will be shrinking our Windows partition, which can be achieved from SteamOS desktop mode. Load up the KDE Partition Manager and select your internal drive. We can see the Windows partition at the bottom of the list, which is the NTFS partition 9. Right-click this partition, select Resize Move, and move the slider to an amount in gigabytes that is to your desired preference, and press OK. Now we have the resize operation queued. We need to right-click this partition, click New and format as ext4. Press OK and hit Apply in the top left, and wait for all the operations to finish. Now, let's restart the Steam Deck and access our Ubuntu installation USB by holding volume down and pressing power once. Once the Ubuntu installer appears, we need to select Install Ubuntu from the choices provided. Choose your keyboard layout and press Continue. You can connect your Wi-Fi at the next step, or select I don't want to connect to a Wi-Fi network right now, and press Continue. On the next screen, ensure that normal installation is selected and press Continue. Now, on this screen, we want to click the Advanced Partitioning tool and scroll down to our ext4 partition we just created in the KDE Partition Manager. Double-click this partition and select ext4 Journaling File System from Use As. Make sure to have your mount point selected as / and press OK, followed by Continue on the prompt that appears. Select Install Now and press Continue twice on the prompts that follow. Select your country and press Continue. And here, you are welcome to use a keyboard to enter your details, or you can copy and paste any word available into the boxes provided. In my instance, this will be simply name for the username and password. Choose Login Automatically, and for the final time, press Continue for the installation to begin. Once completed, press Restart Now, but instead of restarting, we need to boot into our SteamOS recovery USB and disable the Ubuntu EFI by using sudo EFI boot manager -b-a. Now, when we restart the Steam Deck, our bootloader will be present, and we can access the refined GUI from SteamOS desktop mode to apply our finished config containing SteamOS, Windows, Batocera, and Ubuntu. If you enjoyed this tutorial and would like to see more, subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter for more Steam Deck guides and gameplay of old and new games. These videos take a lot of time to create, whilst researching, testing multiple scenarios and providing in-depth instructions for you all to follow. You can support my work via my relaunched Ko-Fi and Patreon. By joining, you can access many different perks such as one-on-one support within a Patreon-only channel within my Discord server, and early access to new videos. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.